Hello everyone, what's good, what's poppin'? It's your girl Caroline and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be giving you guys an updated knot bleaching tutorial showing you guys everything I do step by step to get perfectly bleached knots, as well as giving you some tips and tricks I've learned along the way to kind of help the process be a lot more easier for my beginners out there. So with that said, let's get right into today's video. The wig that we're working with today is from Asteria Hair Company. They went ahead and sent me their deep curly hair. This is 26 inches. It's a 13x4 frontal and it was 250% density. If you're interested in this unit, don't worry, I'll have it linked down below, because y'all, I can't tell my chest, this was a nice wig. I really did enjoy this unit. While the hairline did come nicely pre-plucked, I did not pluck it at all during installation. The knots did need to be bleached. When I'm talking about knots, I'm talking about the actual knots that are being tied onto the bottom of the lace. When lace wigs are being made, each piece of hair, strand by strand, is tied into the little grid knots, and they're tied off into a knot. Now, depending on how big and how dark these knots are, you need to use bleach to bleach them to go from a dark color to more of a lighter blonde brown color. It gives the illusion that the hair is coming out of your scalp and not knots being tied onto a lace of a wig. And that is essentially what it means to bleach your knots. Now let's get into the actual tutorial. To bleach my knots, I like using the charcoal flash lightener powder. This one is from Ion. I have the big tub. It's about $30. It's expensive compared to like the standard BW bleaching powder that you find at beauty supply store. But it is very effective, and it's the one I've been using all the time, and I don't think I'm gonna be switching it up anytime soon. When you are bleaching your knots, you need a bleaching powder and you need a developer. The developer is basically like the activator in this bleaching reaction. So there's 20 volume, 30, and 40. I usually stick between 30 and 40. I find 20 to be too weak for bleaching these dark knots. The higher the number just means how much levels of color, meaning from like level 1 dark to all the way level 10 or something that's really blonde. I have like a dark brown wig that I want to go to blonde. I'll probably use 30 volume developer, but when I usually have like my black dark wigs with dark knots, I use 40 kind of to lift all the way to the highest level possible of blonde for me. And keep in mind, bleaching is a chemical process, so it does damage your knots in the long term. So as a beginner or someone who's trying to keep your wig to last longer, probably just go with 30 volume. So I like to do a 1-to-1 ratio when it comes to my bleach and developer, meaning how much I put as a scoop of the developer is exactly how much I'll put in a scoop of the powder. So I'm just doing about 1.5 scoops because I have a big frontal of the bleaching powder, and I'm going to also mix in 1.5 scoops of the developer. It's really important to get the right consistency with your bleaching solution. It can't be too runny, too thick. It has to be just the right sort of creaminess that's going to run through the lace enough to get the top and the bottom of the knots, but not too thick where it's just going to sit at the base of it. But at the same time, it can be too runny where it's now dripping into your lace and you have over bleached the knots. Be advised, when pouring on that developer, it gets runny really fast, so I just like to pour it in small sections to just mix and mix and mix and make sure I have the right consistency. If it's too dry and too chalky, I'll add just a little bit more, mix it up some more. You just want to get a nice kind of like smooth, creamy texture, but at the same time, when you flip over your mixing brush, it's not dripping all over the place. I always like to slowly pour in my full 1-to-1 ratio with the developer. So here I only poured in the 1.5 scoop, and after I mix everything in, you can see it's still kind of chalky and draggy. So I went ahead and added my other half scoop to complete the full 1-to-1 ratio. And you can see now it's a whole lot more creamy and spreadable, but at the same time, when I flip over this little mixing brush, it's not gonna start dripping. If it drips just a little bit, babes, it's too runny, and add a little bit more powder. You don't want any drippage at all. Now, before I start to bleach the knots on the wig, I like to go ahead and spray the hairline with some hairspray and just brush everything back. This just helps ensure that I'm not going to get any bleach onto the wig or onto the actual hairline. Personally, I like to flip my wigs inside out. That's how I get the bleach to apply a lot better. I'm using a popsicle stick to apply the bleach. I like using a popsicle stick because it helps me kind of like imitate the motions of applying butter onto toast, because you want to apply just enough pressure to get those knots on the top of the lace, but you don't want to apply too much pressure where you're like pushing the hair into the actual hair strand. And I feel like using the popsicle stick just helps me kind of just mimic that pressure that I would apply if I'm adding butter onto toast. You can use anything to apply it. I just find that using a hairbrush that I used to mix it earlier. It's too much. I can't control the pressure with that. Before, I used to use a plastic knife to do this, but it kind of just drags because the ridge is on the knife. You can use anything you want that makes you comfortable, but do not use any metals. Metal is a reactant in this reaction, and it's going to make it process faster, and it's going to just affect your results. No metal. You can use plastic, glass, knife, just no metals. I usually like to start from the back and work my way to the front because the knots in the back are usually darker and bigger. So kind of like when you relax your hair, you always start from the back because it's more coarse. Same thing. And I just work my way all the way up to the top. And I want to make sure I'm working fast enough because once you apply that bleach, it's already starting to react. And I want to make sure everything is getting an even time of reaction. And as another tip, if you can notice, the way I hold the wig is very important because I need to be aware of where the hair is sitting because you don't want to mistakenly get bleach onto the hair. So I hold the lace up in certain angles to kind of avoid the bleach from seeping into the rest of the hair. Most bleaching mistakes really just come from your bleach getting all over your hair because you just want it mainly on the knots. So I just kind of switch around with different angles. Like here for the front, I like to hold the wig open faced up instead of flipped inside out so I can properly get those little tiny knots in the front of the wig. Once I'm done adding the bleach all over the wig and I've made sure that I've pushed it enough into the lace, I go ahead with some aluminum foil and place this underneath. The aluminum foil just kind of helps trap heat, and heat is going to help kind of process the reaction time a little faster. You don't have to put aluminum, but I find that my knots get bleached more evenly and more effectively when I do this step. Just be mindful of how you're placing it in. I like to fold mine up into a little square so I can kind of carefully shove and maneuver it because I don't want to push the bleach too much because as the heat starts to get locked in, it does make the solution a little bit more runny and that bleach will run a bit more. Pushing the bleach is going to promote it to overrun into the actual hairline. Another thing I do to help prevent any like bleach runnage into the actual hair, I go in now and I like to just use my hand and just pull the hair upwards, like get the hair to start sticking up and away from the bleach in the hair. How long I let the bleach sit onto the wig really depends on the hair. It depends on a lot of factors, so I never give it a specific time. What I like to do is leave a 10-minute timer and I just come back every 10 minutes until 30 to max an hour and check on the hair because sometimes the hair will be done in 15, it'll be done in 20, so just leave an interval. Just keep coming back and checking on the hair on interval timers. This is how my hair was looking 30 minutes into the process. You can see the little blonde dots, little blonde roots are coming up. That's how I know my knots are being bleached. Since my skin tone's a bit medium to light, I like to let it be more of an orange yellowy color. But if you're more of the darker, browner shades, you want to go for like more of an orange color. You don't have to let it process for too long. The lighter skin you are, the more you have to let your knots process because your scalp is a whole lot lighter and you need that very light, high level of blonde. For me, a nice orange yellow is good enough, and I know it's time for me to wash it out. You can tell that you've done a good job bleaching your knots when you're washing the knots out, and you can see that under the cap has turned that orange blonde color. That's how you know that you've bleached the knots thoroughly. If under the cap is the same color as it was before, then those knots did not bleach. I like to make sure I'm going in thoroughly and just washing out all the bleach to stop the reaction time because it's still reacting as it's on there. I don't want to continue damaging the hair more than I've already done already. But just take a look at how these knots are looking now. It's looking a lot more like something coming out of your scalp versus it coming out of like a gridlock, if that makes sense. However, as you can see, it is giving off very much orange Donald Trump, like it needs to be toned. We got to tone the scalp. Nobody has an orange bright scalp unless you are Donald Trump. Now to tone my knots, I use a combination of blue and purple shampoo. Blue is great for canceling out all of those orangey tones, and purple is great for canceling out the yellow tone. Because I said I like to let my knots bleach so it's like more orange yellowy color, so I need a combination of both to help neutralize it to be a nice neutral brown color like my scalp. I use just a little bit of that blue pigment I showed you earlier because that Tanaje P. Harris, the blue shampoo I use, it is very pigmented and a little bit goes a long way. As you can see, compared to how much purple I use just a little bit of that blue. I like to mix it in together. I find mixing it instead of just like squirting it onto the lace is a lot more effective because this way I can like actually apply it directly onto the knots versus just splashing it all over the place. Then I go ahead and just apply that solution onto the knots directly and I let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Do be careful when you're adding the toner to your hair if you have like a wig that has like highlights and stuff in it, because just as it's going to tone the bleached knots, it will also tone your bleached hair. So be very careful of that. After completely washing out the toner, and mind you, I did let it sit there for 10 minutes before washing it out. Here's what we are looking like. The knots are nice and neutralized. It's not that bright orange color, and the wig is ready for install. Now when I install the wig, it's going to give more of an illusion that the hair is coming out of my scalp, or coming out of, like, since those knots are now not as visible, it's going to make it look like it's more coming out of my hair versus it showing those little tied dots at the bottom and giving that wiggy look. I don't know if you can tell, but this wig was literally just melting into my scalp. Like the lace 10 out of 10, and these knots being perfectly bleached, it was giving scalp. Okay, that's why it's really important to bleach your knots, because now when you look at the hair, it looks like it's disappearing into your scalp because the dark knots are not there anymore. And here we are with the end of this install and tutorial. As you can see, the wig, it came out great, and that's because one, it was a nice wig, and two, these perfectly bleached knots. Okay, this half up half down I'm rocking, you see how it's giving illusion of the scalp? That's because of the knots, and of course having really good lace. Shout out to Asteria here for that, because this lace, chef kiss on the melting. That's all I have for you guys. And again, if you have any questions or need some more tips and help, feel free to comment down below or just message me on Instagram down below as well. And I'll see you guys in another one. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and peace out, Girl Scouts. Goodbye.